Hey everyone, welcome to Wealth Redefined. I'm your host, Michael Reynolds, independent financial advisor and owner of Elevation Financial. Thanks for joining me today. As always, glad to have you here. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to this episode 117. Today's discussion, how to manage multiple jobs or businesses at the same time. So I've been meaning to talk about this for a while because it's something I've been doing for a while, and I get questions about it sometimes, like, "Hey, how do you manage all this stuff?" I make it no secret that I manage multiple businesses. My primary business is Elevation Financial, as you might expect, but I also have other businesses that I run with partners, and I'll get into the partner thing a little bit later, but. Yeah, I enjoy that. I find it interesting. There's lots of things I like to do, and I do run other businesses as well as this one. And there are various reasons why people might manage multiple businesses or jobs at the same time. And I'm not going to get into that discussion because there are lots of different reasons why people might do this. But I know there are people that have maybe more than one job, more than one business, or maybe a day job and a side hustle where they're growing into a business. So there's lots of reasons why people do this. So this will apply to people that have multiple jobs and or businesses. But as a business owner myself, a lot of these things will kind of skew toward multiple businesses, but will still apply in many cases to maybe you've got multiple jobs or maybe a job plus a business. So let's get into it. So first on my list, when people ask me, how do I manage multiple businesses at the same time? The overarching concept before the logistical stuff that I like to talk about is I think it's very important to separate your job or your business from your identity. And that goes for any of them. If you have multiple businesses or multiple ventures or multiple jobs, I think it's really important to separate them from your identity. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is this. I see tons and tons of solo and small business owners and big business owners too, but I primarily work with solo and smaller businesses. They treat their business like an extension of their identity. They treat their business like a piece of their soul almost, or just a piece of their whole identity. And they are very wrapped up in, who they are is really tied to their business. And there are lots of crossover points. For example, they use their business email for everything. They don't use a personal email. Their business email is used for personal and business stuff. They cross finances. They buy personal stuff with business money and business stuff with personal money. They just mentally think of their business as who they are. So before we get to logistics or any kind of nitty gritty tech stuff, I think it's really important especially if you have multiple businesses, but also if you just have one, or even a job as well, that you really separate your job or especially your business from your identity. So to me, my businesses are assets on my balance sheet. So what I mean by that is if you look at your balance sheet is basically a list of all of the assets you have minus all the liabilities you have. A liability is a debt, something you owe. An asset is something you own, something that has value that you own. And so, a very simple balance sheet might look something like this. You've got your house, maybe a car or two. And then on the other side, the liability side, you might have student loan debt or some credit card debt or something like that, or your mortgage. And, the difference is your net worth, and that's your balance sheet. So on your balance sheet, you have various things. Some of those things should be your business. A lot of people don't think of their business as being something on their balance sheet. They think of it, again, as something that's part of their whole identity. But when you think of a business as an asset, you start to mentally create a healthy separation from your business. And this allows you to think of it in different ways. No longer does it, consume your time as much as it might if you gave it more emotional attachment. You'll probably pay yourself more regularly or more consistently or more appropriately. So lots of good things happen when you think of your business as an asset that's not part of your identity. I've talked about this at length in other contexts. I'm not going to get too far into it today, but that's really important. It's important with one business or one job. It's even more important with multiple jobs or businesses. Same goes for your job. If you have a regular W-2 job, a lot of times we think of that as our identity, but it's not. It's a source of income, not necessarily an asset, but a source of income. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. You can love your business. You can love your job. You can love all your businesses, all your jobs. That's fine. You can love what you do. That doesn't mean you can't really have passion for what you do. But it's important to think of these especially businesses, as assets on your balance sheet that have value and should generate a return for you. You should expect a return from these ventures. All right, so with that out of the way, let's talk about siloing your systems and processes. So let's say you have multiple jobs, multiple businesses. So it's really important to me to silo the different processes and systems for each business. So a lot of people will say, well, I'll just have one file system for everything, or I'll use one to-do list for everything, or I'll just kind of use one piece of software to manage multiple stuff or whatever. And that starts to break down as you get deeper and deeper into these businesses, or even jobs. So one example, email accounts. So email and calendaring are two things that people don't think about a whole lot. They're just sort of everyday things. But if we can manage email and calendaring really effectively, that can make a huge difference. I think it's one of those things, it's a minor, insignificant thing that people just kind of overlook, but can make a massive impact. So email, for example, I have multiple email accounts. I have one email account that's my personal email. So if it's for personal stuff, I'm using my personal email. If it's for family stuff or personal stuff to me, or things that are not business related, I'm using my personal email account. That's what it's for. If I'm communicating in the context of one of my businesses, I will use my business email account for that business, or my work email account, so to speak, for that particular context. And I pull them all together in one view. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't do is they don't pull their inbox together into one view. They have separate logins for everything. Log into Gmail for personal and Gmail for work and other stuff, and a business email account here. And for the most part, you can aggregate this stuff together. So I do aggregate these together into one view, but I'm communicating directly through the email address that is appropriate for that context. So again, if it's Eli School sends a message, it's going to my personal email account, and I'm replying from that account. If something comes through Elevation Financial, like maybe a new client that wants to work with me, that's going to go through that email account, obviously. So very simple. But again, a lot of people don't do this. They just use their business email for everything. It all kind of gets messy. Even more important is calendaring. So I would say this is probably the most important, tech hack or life hack kind of thing that I do to separate businesses, and that's calendaring, because my calendar tells me basically what to do at any given time. My calendar kind of runs my weekly schedule and tells me what's going on and where I need to be and what meetings I'm in. So a lot of times I see people use their, one business calendar for everything, even personal stuff. And then it bleeds over into other businesses, and it's kind of gets really messy. So there is a way that you can aggregate your calendars together in a really comfortable view that works really elegantly, in my opinion. Now, I can't really describe the tech aspects of how to do it all in detail in this format. It's really difficult over a podcast, but I will say that if you want to, more deep instructions on how to do this, email me and I'll help you out with it. But what I do is I have 5 different calendars, a personal calendar and 4 business calendars. And my personal calendar is my master calendar. That's my personal email account through Gmail has my personal calendar. That's my master calendar. That's the one I'm looking at. Then I share individual business calendars into that calendar. They're all Gmail calendars, they're all Google calendars, and so they all share into it. Each one is color-coded. So when I'm looking at my personal calendar, I see personal events on my calendar, but I also see all my business events, and they're color-coded by business. So if I have business A, it's in blue. Business B might be in purple. And so by color, I can see which business the event is tied to. It's still a master calendar because I can't be in 2 places at once. So, at any given time, I'm going to have either nothing or one event scheduled there. And that one event is going to be a personal event, or it's going to be one of my business events that's color coded and tied to that calendar. So it all aggregates together. Now you're wondering, well, how do I do, invitations and stuff like that? Well, I use Calendly as my calendaring system. And for any business, I simply give out the Calendly link that goes with that business. The Calendly account checks all my calendars at once to make sure there's white space. And then when an event gets booked, it gets booked on the business calendar tied to that Calendly system, that Calendly account. And so it makes it really easy. So if I get if there's a personal contact that wants to grab some time, I'll put that on my personal calendar. I might send a Calendly link for that if necessary, but personal stuff, not always Calendly appropriate. But, again, if someone wants to book a meeting with me through Elevation Financial, they use my Calendly link for that, checks all my calendars for white space, grabs white space, books the meeting, puts it on my Elevation Financial calendar. Then it shows up. If someone wants to book a meeting through another business I have, they get that Calendly link. That Calendly account checks all the calendars again, books it on the right calendar, and I'm good. And again, I have one view of everything. So this kind of goes back to the mental separation of the business is an asset that you manage. It's not something that just sucks up your identity. So in looking at my calendar system, I see that my personal calendar drives everything because that's me. And then within my personal calendar, I have business calendars flowing into it that are in the right context. Again, it's kind of tough to describe over a podcast. So if you want to learn how to do this yourself, send me an email at podcast@elevationfinancial.com, and I'll be happy to help you out. I'll send you articles, or I'll give you a walkthrough, or you can even book a meeting with me and we can walk through it together. All right, so next, use a master to-do list separated by business. I call this the one trusted system. So this is a GTD principle, or getting things done principle, from David Allen, this concept of trusted systems. So I use trusted systems to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. And the key is to have really one trusted system. And for me, that's my to-do list. And I have a simple to-do list. I use Microsoft To Do currently. And I really like it. It works really well because I can separate by different lists. And each business has its own list. So at any given time, I'm pulling out my phone, looking at my to-do list, and I have a master view of all my to-do items. I can dig into a specific context, but I can also look at the view of what's going on all at once, and I can kind of see them separated by business. So this helps me to have one master view of stuff I need to worry about, but it's separated by business, so I can dig in and do just stuff applying to one business at any given time if I want to. So systems and processes also are really, really important. This kind of gets into scalability. So scalability is how much efficiency you can kind of squeeze out of a business. And for a lot of us that run solo businesses, this is really driven by the technology and the systems that we have in place. And so one example is workflows and checklists. So in this business, Elevation Financial, my primary business, I have a CRM called Wealthbox that kind of drives my communications and my task list within that context. And I have what's called workflows. So workflow is a really good candidate for anything that you do more than once or twice. So one example is every time a new client decides to work with me, I don't really have to think about all the onboarding stuff too much. Every client that works with me has the same experience because I have a workflow predefined for that. So when a new client signs on the contract and says, "Hey, let's go," the first thing I do is kick off a workflow, and it basically walks me through everything I've pre-decided what to do. Things like, hey, let's save the agreement into their client folder. Let's update their contact record. Let's invite them to my planning portal. Let's do all this stuff. And it's all just kind of done for me because I've decided in advance what the steps need to be to onboard a new client. So that makes it really easy to manage multiple businesses, because if every business you have has these workflows and checklists, you don't have to really worry about scaling as much, because you get a new client or a new project comes in, boom, kick off the workflow, and the system kind of thinks for you because you've decided in advance. So pretty much every CRM or project management system that's worth something has workflows built in or some kind of checklist built in. So use that system. And I found that, I'll go ahead and say most, I'm going to just say maybe that's true, that most businesses I've seen that are solo and small businesses are wildly inefficient. They're so inefficient because they haven't taken the time to create processes. They just do everything ad hoc and reinvent the wheel every time. And that makes it very difficult to manage more than one business, because any one business is already sucking up a bunch of time because you're reinventing the wheel every time you do something. And then you add a second or third business to the mix, and suddenly you're overwhelmed. So it's really, really critical, in my opinion, to have systems and processes that are tight and well-defined so that each business can scale effectively and you're not spending as much time on each individual business. Also, this goes for your filing system. I use Google Drive as my filing system, works really well. You want to have multiple filing systems, one for each business that is well thought out, well defined. You need to be able to find things really easily, have a folder structure that's logical and hierarchical and really makes sense. So from the get-go, from the start, as you're launching new businesses, make sure you have a well-defined file structure. And if you don't, go back and fix it. Go back and gradually work through building a file structure for each business that makes sense for you. You want to be able to find stuff really easily, file stuff easily, even things down to your LLC documents, your banking documents, your financial statements, your tax returns, all that kind of stuff. So all of this kind of adds up to say anything you can do to reduce friction is going to help you manage multiple businesses or jobs at the same time. So this concept of friction is often underappreciated, I think, by many business owners. And friction is anything that just slows you down, anything that bogs you down in minutia, anything that bogs you down in administrative stuff. So I'm a big fan of eliminating or reducing as much friction as possible. So all these things will help you reduce friction. Next, use time blocking to batch tasks by context. So it's very inefficient to just look at your to-do list and just say, well, I'm going to just kind of grab stuff here and there and go into my email here and there and go into my calendar and just batch meetings all together, and switching between contexts. Whenever possible, you're much more efficient if you can batch things together by context. And in this example, I'm referring to by business or by job. So let's say you own 2 businesses. Well, is it more efficient to have a meeting for one business, meeting for another business, back and forth in your calendar? It goes back and forth each time. And is it efficient to go to your to-do list and bounce around back and forth between businesses, or answer emails between businesses back and forth? No, it's much more efficient to say, I'm going to spend the next hour and a half or 2 hours going through my inbox for this one business and addressing things in that business, or I'm going to go to that to-do list for this business, addressing things in that business. So there are different ways to batch by context. You can also batch by true context, which is, all phone calls are batched together, all emails are batched together. That can work as well. But within that, I also think it's really useful to batch as a subcontext the actual business you're working with. So try to batch things together and not swap back and forth your attention too much. Some tech tools, LastPass or a password manager. This is really, really important. So I can't count the times I've seen someone struggle with passwords. I'm working with someone on something and they're like, oh, I don't know my password. I have to look in this notebook or grab a spreadsheet or reset my password. And if there's nothing else you do to change anything, if you're not using a password manager, just start using one today. It's so much better. I like LastPass. There are other apps as well, but a password manager will plug into your web browser. You've got an app on your phone. It'll manage all your passwords in one location. And it'll autofill everything. When you log into sites, it'll autofill your password information. It's much more secure than the default, password autofill in your browser. I wouldn't use that. Also, it's not as scalable because if you change browsers or something happens, you're going to lose all those passwords. So I like having an independent password manager, and I use LastPass. But again, there are many other ones out there you can grab. LastPass is just one of the best in my opinion. Also, learn to delegate. This may seem obvious, but we're really bad at it as entrepreneurs. I'm bad at it too, I'll admit it. So the more you can delegate, this goes back to processes. First, you make processes, then you can delegate those processes. This can be to a virtual assistant, or it can be to other team members if you have employees. But getting really good at delegating will help you manage multiple businesses at the same time. And you want to get in the habit of being in owner mode and not operator mode. Operator mode is, hey, I'm answering the phone, I'm answering a bunch of emails for clients, I'm doing minutia of administrative stuff, I'm putting out fires. Like, that's operator mode. Owner mode is, hey, I'm coming up with a roadmap for this initiative in our business. I'm going to delegate that to someone. Hey, I'm coming up with an idea for a new product line. I'm going to delegate that to someone. I'm going to create the execution steps and delegate that part. I'm going to have high-level visionary thinking on how to grow the business and how to expand. Those are owner-level things to do. So the more you can get into owner level and delegate the operator level stuff to someone else, the more you can scale and the more you can manage multiple businesses at the same time. Finally-ish, I say finally-ish because this is not a complete list. No list is ever complete, but you might consider business partners. So my other businesses that are not this one all have partners. I have one or in one case, 2 partners in different businesses, and that can help a lot. And my caveat here is you want to be really careful with this because partnerships don't always work well. Sometimes they don't work well at all. But I've been fortunate that I've had partnerships that don't work and work. In my early days, over 2 decades ago in business, I had partnerships that worked for a while and then kind of didn't work as well, and that's fine. Nothing bad happened. It just kind of didn't work out as well at the time. But my current partnerships have been very sustainable and have worked very well and very enjoyable. It's been a great experience. So if you are the right partner, then that can help split the load and alleviate some of the burden of running the business, because you're kind of sharing the responsibilities together. So definitely something to be very careful about, not like a, hey, check the box kind of thing. It's something to just think about and explore. But if you want to launch a new business or grow another business besides maybe your primary business, a business partner can help with that, because you bring different ideas to the table, different skill sets, take on workload in a more shared context. So a partner can sometimes make sense. So I'd love to hear what you would add. Those are the things that come to mind when I'm asked, how do I manage multiple businesses at the same time? Some of these things do apply to jobs as well, so kind of translate that to multiple jobs too. But again, as a business owner, I am more tuned into how to run multiple businesses at the same time. And I've been doing that for a while, and I feel like my systems work very well for me. And these are some things that I would share with you to hopefully help you maybe glean some tactics and some insights that might help you run multiple ventures at the same time as well. So as I said this before, going back, if you have questions about any of this stuff or want to dig into it, send me an email, podcast@elevationfinancial.com. Let me know if you have questions about any of this stuff, or if you want to dig into it and maybe even jump on a meeting together. I'm happy to help you or give you resources to help you kind of figure out some of the tech aspects of these things, especially things like calendaring. That's kind of an in-depth thing. So with that, as always, I'd really love to hear feedback. So I actually recently just got a new prospective client reached out, having found me on my podcast. So I love to hear from you. So, if you found this podcast useful and helpful, even if you're not ready to work together right now or even ever, just feel free to reach out and send me a note and tell me, a question you have or something you've maybe learned from it or something you'd like to hear about in the future. And I'd appreciate it. You can find me, as always, at elevationfinancial.com. And as always, feel free to grab that meeting on the that button on the homepage that says book a complimentary money session, and we'll talk about anything you want. No pressure. Happy to answer questions. So with that, thanks for joining me today. As always, have a great day. See you next time.